Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for appearing before us today to answer our questions. I want to start by trying to channel the dismay and the frustration and the anger of hundreds of Canadian passengers who were stuck over the holidays because of the incidents that we've been talking about already at this meeting. And among that group, I don't think there's a group that feels more frustrated and more angry than the passengers of Sunwing who were stranded in international destinations for days and days. And I wanted to set the stage by reading the same email I read at our last meeting and then directing some questions to Mr. Corrado from Sunwing. This is from the mother of a Sunwing customer who was stranded in Puerto Vallarta. She writes, "He is getting no reliable information from Sunwing as to how long this may last. Every day he has to check out of the hotel and wait in the lobby to see if he's included in the passenger list that will be provided a room for the next night. He is frantic. From my end, I have had countless phone calls to Sunwing and have not been able to talk to anyone. There is no reliable information, no communication from Sunwing representatives. He cannot afford to book a return flight with another airline and then fight with Sunwing to get his money back. I know there are certain rights he has, but they seem to be difficult to access, and our government does not seem interested in their constituents' dilemmas. He's not alone. There are hundreds of Canadians in the same situation. Something has to be done for these people. I'm a senior on pensions that are very limited. I cannot afford to fly him home." Well, she did end up flying him home on another airline at their own expense. At the end of all this, Sunwing has offered this family $150. So my first question for Mr. Corrado, and I appreciate that that is in addition to paying for the expenses that were incurred, but why $150? I guess that's my first question. Why $150?
Thank you for your question. First of all, as you read that detail, I'm a father as well. That's a story that tugs at one's heart. I don't know the specifics of that story today, but as a parent, as a Canadian, that's a story that's unacceptable. Without understanding the specifics of this, I can't comment on the 150. What I can tell you is that if the flight falls within our APPR obligations, all of those obligations are being met. What I can tell you is that we had representation in destinations. We paid for hotel, food, beverage, and we had people supporting in destination. If we failed specific to this, again, without understanding the specifics, I can't comment, but we were fully committed on doing all possible to support passengers who did not depart as planned. And we're sorry for this, and we've spoken about the various reasons, but we will do right by our passengers as per regulation, and we've done right by our passengers in destination.
January 5th, mea culpa, you wrote that we also understand our obligations under Canada's air passenger protection regulations and will ensure full compliance with these regulations. In your mind, what does full compliance mean? Does that mean that passengers who wish to access compensation can wait in line with 33,000 other Canadians for a year and a half?
I don't understand the wait in line. We have a portal open through our website. We're processing those passenger claims for APPR and following the regulation. And we have a time limit as to by which we have to settle those, provide compensation or decide whether no compensation applies. And I'm not going to get into adjudicating case by case here because that wouldn't be fair to anybody. But we follow the regulation as prescribed.
Will Sunwing be proactively awarding compensation as per the terms of APPR?
We will process claims through our APPR portal, through our website, as we normally do since APPR began.
To you an email from January 2nd to one of your passengers, and this is going to sound awfully familiar to a lot of Canadian passengers because frankly this is the kind of email that all the airlines have been sending out. It says, "We sincerely apologize for any disruption to your flight schedule. Please note that flight delays on November 2nd and onwards were delayed due to an unforeseen operational restriction affecting our flight operations, and it was out of the carrier's control. Your flight is not eligible for compensation or reimbursement for flight delay under Canada's air passenger protection regulations." This doesn't sound like you're what's the quote here, ensuring full compliance and understanding your obligations. This sounds like you're using the same loophole in the air passenger protection regulations in the Canadian Transportation Act that all the other airlines have been using. Can you explain how many people received an email like that, denying them compensation?
I can't give you a number clearly, but someone who's received that email means that flight was adjudicated outside the carrier's control, whether that be weather, whether that be an airport facility, whether that be an airplane that cannot operate for reasons as prescribed for safety under the regulation. So I again, without knowing the specifics of the event, I can't comment, but clearly that flight's been adjudicated outside carrier's control as prescribed by regulation.
Mr. Corrado, if these situations were outside of your control, why did you apologize?
The flight you quote is November 2nd, and I've apologized for where we have failed to deliver to our expectations.
Thank you, Mr. Corrado, and thank you, Mr. Bachrach. You can continue that line of questioning in your next round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll direct my next question to our witnesses from WestJet. We've received an email from a WestJet passenger who flew with you from Edmonton to Orlando. Their original flight on December 25th was canceled, and they received an email from WestJet saying that there was no option for the company to rebook them within the next 48 hours. They were then able to rebook their own ticket on the 29th on a WestJet flight. WestJet then refused to compensate them the difference in price because they booked at the last minute. The flight on the 29th cost significantly more. But my first question is around the statement from WestJet that there was no option for the company to rebook them within 48 hours. Does that include on other carriers?
Sorry, no. Thank you for the question. And if you have any specifics about a constituency case, we've obviously fielded dozens of these from you and your colleagues, so we're happy to take a look at that. And we're happy to provide that service to you and other members of Parliament. We booked many guests on other carriers, as other carriers did throughout the season, and we did everything we could to get people moving. With respect to this individual case you're talking about, we do have an obligation to respond to a claim within 30 days. That's as part of our regulation. If the guest does not agree with our interpretation or what we've provided to them, they have the opportunity to go to the CTA, which unfortunately has a long backlog. They do not adjudicate claims within 30 days, which is something we are obliged to do. So I would encourage that guest, and I would encourage you, if you have a constituency problem, and we'll make our best efforts to appropriately make sure that they're looked after. But there were a lot of guests because of the scale of the weather and the cascading problems that Scott walked through that sadly and unfortunately were not able to be rebooked within 48 hours.
So I'd like to turn to the issue of reimbursing hotel expenses. You mentioned that you've reimbursed guests for hotels. In October 2022, the CTA issued a decision in which it stated that your policy of providing $150 for reimbursement of hotel expenses was not as per the APPR. Have you changed that policy at WestJet? What is the current reimbursement policy for hotel expenses?
With respect to the reimbursement or the hotels that we offered throughout the pandemic, I believe the decision that you're referring to is very specific to controllable situations or any situations for safety upon which we have to provide accommodations. We do continue to follow the regulations for that purpose and follow that decision. With respect to this specific holiday season, we exceeded our regulatory obligations by providing hotels for up to 3 nights for what were uncontrollable disruptions to make sure we were taking care of our guests in this instance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach.